Hello everyone, this is Ankita.
This is Pratyush.
We welcome you all to our program Deep into Design, a humble initiative by the D42 team during these difficult times. Our efforts will be to demystify design for architecture aspirants or the young leaders in the field. Today is the first installment of this virtual series. Today is also the World Environment Day. So we thought of combining these two occasions on our first day through some very friendly and informative talk and a short demonstration where we will show you some very basic tricks and techniques that students can utilize in their design learning practices based on recycling and restoring everyday objects. The official webpage of the World Environment Day of UNEP declares, "We cannot turn back time, but we can grow trees, green our cities, rewild our gardens, change our diets and clean up rivers and coasts. We are the generation that can make peace with nature." Keeping with the tradition, this year's theme is ecosystem restoration. Restoration happens to be an integral concept in architectural studies as well. So sir, what do you have to say regarding that?
See, whenever man makes a structure, it's almost like an imposition on whatever there is in nature, on earth. So the moment architecture steps in on a vacant land or on a natural state of the earth, it already disturbs the inherent ecosystem of that space.
Yeah.
So if you need to be very soft in your approach, and so that the disturbance to the ecosystem is minimal, that is one way of restoring your ecosystem. And that can happen with very sensitive understanding of the problem and sensitive solutions to the problem. So the young generation that is going to take up the mantle, who will be studying the architectural sciences, would have to keep this in their mind while trying to go for the future, architectural designs.
Absolutely. So what can be the possible ways to restore our ecosystem? I mean, from an architectural point of view.
Well, the great American master Frank Lloyd Wright had once said that when you are trying to build something on a site, and if nature is not manifest there, then be as subtle and gentle as nature would have been if it was present. And if it is present, then be as soft, so that there is a symbiosis between what the environment around that site is and your habitable space. The great masters have actually shown it. If you look at Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Waters, it looks as if the environment or the nature or the site has actually created that house, that habitable space. It was as if that building was built the moment nature came into existence. So I believe there are so many ways, and people all over the world are actually trying to do this. But the basic thing that I believe one can include in their approach is to be sensitive to the context. Every site has a context, and the context is not just one context. It's a combination of a lot of contexts. The geographical context, the climatic context, the socio-political context, the economic context. If you can actually balance all these issues and give sensitive solutions to all of them, so that one solution does not hamper another factor in the entire thread, then I think we can actually approach to creating architecture which is not harmful to the ecosystem, or rather would be in symbiotic relationship with the ecosystem.
How are the 3 R's, restore, recycle and reimagine, as you know, it is the theme of World Environment Day, related to architecture? What do you have to say about that?
Let me start with an example.
Sure.
Say you've made or you bought a storage place like a small little cupboard for your food, which has a shutter and a screen so that it prevents flies from getting in, and you can keep your food over there, the shelves. Now over the years, after using it for extensively for in your kitchen, you find one day that the shutters are coming loose, and it's just and the netting, the screen's off, and it's in a quite dilapidated state. And you want to buy a new one, but you don't know what to do with this old one. At the same time, you realize that you need a shoe rack. And all that you can do is take those things off which are not working, replace it with something, and reuse it for something else. So there you go as a reimagining it. It's like you have one function, something has served its purpose, and now it's time to reimagine what else function, which other use you can put it into. And
instead of throwing it away.
It away. And then that might require some restoration, because you have to take out the old, you have to put something new, so that the entire structure that was there stands, but for a new function, to accommodate a new purpose. And in the entire, after reimagining and after restoring it, the product that you've come up with, the final product, is a recycled one. And if you actually think of architecture, it's not really so difficult to imagine that this thing can be done in architecture. See, instead of keeping on building, I can, rather all of us know that there are so many other old buildings that are of no use now. And instead of breaking them down completely, demolishing them down completely, why not be sensitive enough to just simply use our design knowledge to change it to a different need, to change it to a different purpose that is suitable for this age. So that building, instead of being demolished, gets revamped, reimagined, and recycled into a new structure altogether. And this sensitivity can be brought in through a strong knowledge of the vernacular architecture of any place. See, vernacular architecture that, say for example, India. Various parts of India, there are various kinds of vernacular architecture in place. And all these have evolved through centuries, through explorations of materials, through understanding of the climatic factors, comfort factors, geographical factors, what are the materials available there in that geographical context, the structural system that people can employ, and the structures in the villages or in areas where there are no engineers and architects, that the structures that have grown are very much in tune with their own ecosystem. We can take a lot of lessons from there. We can learn from there. And improvising those age-old techniques for our modern, to suit our modern interests and functions and purposes is what architects can do, is what young and interested designers can actually venture into.
As you said, the architects or the designers can do. What exactly is the design or the design process?
Well, the design process is, as you said, it's just a process. It's just a process to arrive at the final product. Now, in any process, there are so many factors that have to be taken into account and balanced, so that the final product that you arrive at is functional, aesthetically pleasing, and something that is stable, that will last long, and so on and so forth, that serve your function, serve your purpose and everything. So now, these design process is different for each and every designer. the way they approach to the problem and find the solution out. But the basic thing of all the process is a sensitive understanding of the factors that will be influencing the design process. Now you cannot see a process, can you?
No.
You can't. But you can see the end product.
Yeah.
So you cannot see design. Design cannot be seen. What cannot be seen should be designed. That is how something functions, how something holds to each other, how something is fixed, how something opens, how something closes, how something functions is, the process of design is how to make that. How is the process, and what you see is the end product.
Very well said. What do you think, why the students of architecture should know about it? Why do you think they should be aware of it?
Well, they are designers, so hence they have to be aware of all the factors. And the interesting part about architectural design is that in the industry there would be so many other engineers and technicians that would be involved in making a structure or making a project, architectural project of any scale. Now the architect actually has to be one among equals, or the leader among equals. He is not the one, he or she is not any better than everybody else, but he or she has developed through their training and experience an ability to see or ability to have a perspective that that nobody else has. So an architect has to understand each of the technicalities involved or each of these factors that will have to be addressed over there, whether it is a structural system, whether it is the environmental system, whether it is the materials, the vernacular materials, or any other materials that he or she is using in it. So the students of architecture needs to go through this process, and these trying to understand this process, it actually is a lifetime in a work. You can't simply understand something just by a 4-year course or a 5-year college education. It requires an education of your entire life to really grasp something completely. But what the students go through in these 4-5 years brings their mind into a training to so that they can learn. The mind gets trained so that they can become sensitive to all these issues, understand what their effects are in their final design, and coordinate and control and bring out a really creative solution. So hence the students really have to understand that the key to their success in trying to balance or have a symbiotic relationship with the surrounding or the ecosystem of their architectural masterpiece. So they have to be very sensitive to all these. So they have to train their mind to be sensitive to all this, and that happens in this education.
Okay. How does a student integrate principles of ecological restoration in their design learning practices rather?
I would say a student should do it the same way as a working professional does. See, in one of our projects, as I guess you know, that the site had a very interesting ecology. It had a huge water body, a pond, and there are so many ecosystems that are related to a pond. Lots of trees, lots of indigenous plants, lots of plantations already done by the owner of the site. And our approach right from the very beginning had been such that the functions, the purpose of the structures that our clients want would set a very low footprint on the site, restoring the pond, restoring the greenery or the ecology that was getting spoiled because the site was not being used. So, and then creating a symbiosis, right? And see, in this process, there is a lot of learning and unlearning involved, and that learning and unlearning can only happen if one actually starts doing something with their hand, getting on the job with their hand, and actually making and breaking it. And one important tool that architects or architecture students have in this process is the model making. Yeah. And that sort of gives them a first hand information of what they are going to build or what they are going to design. And if an architecture student has to imbibe the sensitivity of trying to look after the ecology of the site that they are building on, certain things need to be inculcated right from the very beginning. And I believe that one thing that can be done is when we make models. These working models have to be made and torn apart and remade again, which requires inexpensive materials. Hence, we can suggest that if architecture students are really into it, if they want to inculcate these habits, they should look into the waste materials that are left around the house, or things that have lost its function once they have like a packing box, like an Amazon packing box, that once the goods are delivered, we throw it away. And there are so many other small little stuff that once we have used them, we don't know how to use them again. So all it requires is a student to reimagine it, and hence they will be able to recycle it. And I believe that once these small little things, these small little steps, in the long run, in the future, when they practice, will give them a perspective that will create architecture or structures that are much more symbiotic in nature.
Like we usually do in our studio, like always the first step is always the model making using the scrap materials and all.
And that you've seen that how easy it is to explain the idea to not just the client, but also the people who are actually going to be associated with building it, the consultants, the craftsmen, and it's a wonderful tool.
Absolutely. Okay, so now let us demonstrate how these simple objects, everyday objects, can be used by the architectural students to make the physical models.
you've enjoyed this little talk show, and we also hope that you've learned something about recycling, restoring, and reimagining. And if you want to learn something more about model making, please write to us, drop us an email, drop us your comments. And if there's anything specific you would want to ask, we would like to know more about it, and we promise to share our insights about it in our next conversations and next episodes. Thank you.
Thank you.